Hey guys, Board now back with you, and on this video I will be talking about the second episode of the fourth season of The Handmaid's Tale. The episode is called Nightshade, so I will be going into full spoilers, so just warning you in case you haven't seen the episode yet. And I'm definitely more positive on this second episode of the series. I think, again, there's some good sort of world building stuff. I think definitely building on some of the themes, some of the stuff going on in Canada, for example, I'm enjoying, I'm liking. I think it's interesting to see that contrast compared with what's going on with Gilead and with June and the rest of them. And it's something they have to do in this show moving forward if they're going to justify it having multiple seasons. Because I know for a fact it's already been renewed for season 5, and definitely it's something they need to do if they're going to justify it having that many seasons, at least 5 seasons. So there's sort of good stuff in this episode and promising stuff on that front. And I did enjoy the June stuff more. It still wasn't perfect. There's still little nitpicks I had with it, but definitely stronger than last week's. I think maybe last week's you could put down to being just a slightly clunky opening episode of the season where a lot of it was set up. Which I guess in a way isn't, you can't excuse that too much because this is now season 4 of a very serialized show. But at the same time, I think obviously depending on what happens from here on out and what that first episode was setting up, then it may well pay those things off later. Who knows? But in any case, I'm definitely more positive on this episode. And there's a couple of really nice touches in this episode. As I said, there's some good stuff in Canada. One thing, I'll just talk about the June stuff and compare it with some of the other stuff. One nice little link that I liked about this episode is because it focuses a bit more on Serena and Fred and their case, and obviously him trying to bring charges against her. And we sort of focus more on that, and because at one point Serena's lawyers are giving her this tactic she where she has an examination and they look at her bruises and things like that, and they're kind of saying, yeah, this is your best strategy to make the most of this stuff and to use it to your advantage. And they kind of said ultimately we can, not only can you win the case, but we can maybe get you back with Nicole, essentially. And at one point Serena suggests a tactic where she goes to talk to Fred and tries to convince him to drop the case, and obviously going to try and appeal to their relationship, their past relationship, the fact that obviously man and wife. But what I quite like about it is just the fact that there's still this sort of naivety about Serena, and it kind of comes, I guess, from just being under repression for so long. And obviously she's not completely innocent in that. She has done a lot of dodgy stuff, but at the same time a very sort of system that is heavily linked towards the men in Gilead. And obviously we find out she has been abused by Fred herself. But I think what I kind of like about it, because there is this naivety about Serena, but she goes into that room still thinking there's goodness in her husband, still thinking that, hey, we did have something, he wasn't always a monster, and that she can appeal to his sensitive side and whatever. Just the fact that she's almost making the case that then Gilead affected him in a bad way, and it forced him to do extreme things rather than he was bad going in, so to speak. I think what this episode proves, and probably what we've known as an audience anyway, is that no, Fred is pretty much awful and kind of unredeemable. But I think because at this point Serena is a largely sympathetic character, certainly more sympathetic than she was, then I think at least you engage with that a little bit from her point of view, even though I think we've all pretty much made up our minds about Fred. But and then think, I guess it's not surprising for the sake of drama. Fred, doesn't go for it and is kind of nasty and says, "No, I'm not going to drop this." And did you really think that would work? And he also makes this comment about Nicole is no more yours than she is mine, which is a really nasty comment. Technically, it's kind of true, but it's also really not, because clearly Serena does have this bond for her, and I think it's taken on face value does sort of care for Nicole in some sort of way that Fred clearly doesn't. But in any case, that stuff was quite interesting, and it's also good because it links to something that happens in Gilead with June, where she's still being like a mother figure for like Miss Cass, where she explains at one point, because they're sort of plotting, killing off her commander, and part of the whole thing with this episode is that her and June and the other refugees are sort of talking about their future and planning to go to a safe haven, because they get wind that the Guardians have like come to the farm searching for them, and how safe will we be in the long term. So they're sort of planning this next movement, and June gets a contact where it says from another sort of handmaid, it says, this could be a place, but they have to set up a plan essentially. And point June and Miss Cass, I think Esther's her name, I can't quite remember her actual name, but they're having this conversation, and I think Esther, because she is this much younger girl with not as much life experience, and also because of obviously how awful her life has been really growing up, and some of the messed up stuff she's had doing her, that's kind of all she knows about like men and about kind of relationships and stuff. So she does have this very cynical worldview when it comes to men and stuff. And June, with more experience and more perspective, that actually does put her right on that. She actually puts things in perspective and says there's good men out there, even in Gilead. And I think she's definitely right, but it sort of links nicely to the stuff with Serena and Fred, where Serena has this belief that Fred is essentially good, and that he was just changed by Gilead, even though, yeah, as an audience, we're not really buying that. I think I sort of have what I don't know if it's a complaint or not, but just one thing with the June side of the plot in this episode, because at one point they set this thing up, and we find out that Miss Cass has essentially been slowly poisoning her commander for a while now. So June has this idea to use the poison to kill off all these other guys at this. It's sort of like a country type retreat, and it's I wasn't quite sure what her plan was exactly, but it's just something to do with, obviously, so that they can go to this sort of safe space. So they set up this sort of operation where June goes to the function and she like takes the poison with her, and obviously like the other handmaid is working there, so she kind of serves them, and they put the poison in the drink. And I think there's this little concern with this season that it could become this kind of, I think because they are going for like a more rebellious, yeah, this is the rebellion and kick ass sort of feel, then maybe it could go a bit far in that, and it could become a bit too like comic book and just a little bit jarring in some scenes. By nine anyway, like in this one particular scene, because you get like a really rocking David Bowie number. It's I forget the song actually. The it's gone in my head. Suffragettes something or other. But anyway, it's a really kick-ass sort of Bowie like rocking number, and it's sort of set to as they're like poisoning the various people at this party. And on the one hand, again, it's quite a clever use of music, and it's quite a well directed scene and stuff, and it does get the message across. But I think just sometimes with stuff like that, the season could become a bit too, yeah, in your face, like action movie style thing, and maybe lose the tone of what The Handmaid's Tale should be. So it's just a little thing that, if they take it too far in some cases, because also I think I said last week that maybe some of this stuff with June was getting quite murky. Um, and I guess that's interesting because one of the themes of this episode and probably of this series is June's legacy, and what is it going to be actually. And we see this scene back in Canada where her friend Maura and her husband Luke are setting up like a charity for like the kids who they've rescued from Gilead, and they're trying to get them home. And we see that Emily's working with them as well, which is a nice sort of touch. But they're sort of talking about like June's legacy, and making sure her sacrifices weren't in vain, and we see obviously that they're still believing and confident that she is still alive. We just see a bit more of the characters and stuff, and we see the struggle to get them homes. There's a subtle little scene actually with Emily, and because Maura has a girlfriend, and there's like a scene in the office where they kind of have like a romantic moment, and they're just like sort of flirting and talking, and there's just a subtle little glance from Emily, who, even though she's like cool about it and obviously is friendly with Moira and stuff, I think also it's just that thing of, yeah, she misses her girlfriend, and she misses that sort of thing. So there's just a subtle little thing there. But I guess the really big dramatic stuff in Canada is with one of the orphans who they're struggling to get a home for. And there's this scene where um, Maura comes over to see him, and we find out that he's missing Gilead. He's missing his family in Gilead, and because that's all he's ever known, and that's just the way he sees things. That, because I guess although very crooked and all the rest of it and the regime, I think obviously at the same time, maybe in a way he was never mistreated by them, or certainly he would see it that way. So you can totally understand it, and I really like this stuff with him because I think it's very logical, and it sort of builds on the world and the mythology of The Handmaid's Tale. So it's really good stuff, and it's also a good like character thing for Mora because like the boy's very kind of blunt with him and kind of getting frustrated, and he wants that life or he wants to go back there. And Mora's very good about it. It's like, no, you've got to at least embrace what he's saying. You've got to like engage with what he's saying. You can't dismiss it. You can't be like blunt like that because it's not going to do any good. It's going to put him get his back up, and it'll just make him miss Gilead even more. So we see actually that Moya has like really good people skills and is good with the boy. So that's all good stuff. I pretty much like all the stuff in Canada. I think there's definitely some good world building and long episode. Again, I mean maybe one or two small complaints, but it's certainly a big improvement from last week, and hopefully it will continue improving, getting better as the season goes along. So that's Handmaid's Tale for the week, episode 2 of the 4th season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you've been watching. Like and subscribe. Also, if you would share me out on social media. Help to get more eyeballs on the channel. And you can also ding the bell on YouTube to get notifications when I go live. A new video goes up on the channel. Thanks for listening. See you next time.